Hello, this is Samantha from the Handmade Dress. Today we're going to do a little gathering tutorial. And what we're going to be working with, or what I'm going to be working with, is kind of a tiny version of the dress. I've got a little tiny bodice here, a little skirt, and I'm going to teach you how to do pretty gathers. So, first, what I've done is I've taken my little pieces and I've pressed a crease down the center to mark my centers, and the same with the little skirt. You can do this, you can just mark it here, put a little tick mark with a water soluble marking pen. I just find it easier to press. What we're going to do first is we're going to run gathering threads, and all a gathering thread is a straight stitch set on your longest setting on your machine. Mine goes up to 5, some go up to 4, whatever. It's just your longest stitch setting. I always do 2, and there's 2 reasons for that. One, my main reason, is because it just makes prettier gathers. If you do 2, whatever your seam allowance is, you will just put 1/8 of an inch on either side. You will sew your gathering threads, so that your seam allowance will go straight through the center of those, and you'll understand that a little more in a minute. But it just makes prettier gathers because you're sewing on that flat part. And the other reason is because when you're up 3 in the morning sewing a skirt for the next morning, it never feels a gathering thread's going to break, and you're going to be really happy you had 2 threads instead of 1. It will save you. Okay, in my machine right now I have my bobbin thread is top pink, my top thread is black, just for this tutorial. So I've got my machine set, and like I said, I'm going to sew. I know where my seam allowance is, and I'm going to go 1/8 of an inch on either side of that seam allowance so that the seam allowance can go right through the middle. And I pull off some extra string because you need some string to pull on either side thread. I always get on to people for saying string. And now that I'm on video, I'm saying string. Kim, I hope you enjoyed that. Kim seems to be the one I get on to the most. Okay, so pulling off extra thread here. And what I'm going to do, on my machine, my bobbin thread seems to be looser. It just seems like it pulls easier. So I'm going to choose my bobbin thread, but you may find after you've tried this a couple of times that maybe your top thread is looser, because I've heard of that. First we're going to pin. I'll explain more about the bobbin thread or the top thread. I matched my center creases up, and I'm just going to pin. I always pin on the side where the gathers are going to be, because that's what side is going to be facing up while you're sewing. And then I'm going to pin each end. Just kind of match it here. I hope you can see. And pin. Okay. Take my shish kebab sticks. And I'm going to separate my bobbin threads, because I only want to pull on my bobbin threads. If you pull both, it'll lock it. Okay, so what I have here, let me show you really quick, is a loose skirt and then my tiny bodice, okay? And I want these to be about the same length. So I'm going to take my bobbin threads and gently start working down some gathers. And just kind of work them to that center mark, and then pull some more, kind of work them down. And what I usually do is I gather it up. I'm going to exaggerate it a little so that you'll be able to see it more. But I gather it up just a tiny bit tighter than what I'm gathering to. And I'll show you why in a minute. And now you understand why it's easier if you have a looser thread. If your machine, if the top thread or the bottom thread is looser, you want to try to work with whichever thread is going to pull the easiest. And that's what I was talking about before with the bobbin thread. And I've heard some people say that their top thread is looser, but I've heard more people say that their bobbin thread is looser. Okay, so same thing over here. Just going to take this in. I'm going to pull it tight. Hope you can see this. I don't have an expert cameraman handy today. Okay, so now I've got this tighter, and I'm going to show you why. This is just my technique for doing this. Okay. Then I'm going to put my presser foot down, and I'm going to put my needle down. That is going to hold everything in place while I do what I'm about to do. Take my needle, my pin out, and this is why I like to have the gathers a little tighter than the yoke, because when I start distributing the gathers evenly, so that they're kind of evenly spread out and they're really pretty, I'm kind of doing the cosmetic work here. It tends to stretch a little bit, and I don't like trying to gather it back up while it's on the machine. I know a lot of people do this before they get to the machine, but I just have found it a lot easier here when I can spread it out flat, and then it doesn't stretch by the time I get it to the machine. So like I said, this is just my technique. Okay, so I've got them evenly. I've got them lined up here. I know it's hard for you to see, but then I'm going to sew my seam right through the middle. Reset my machine to a regular stitch because it was on the long one for the gathering thread. And I'm just going to kind of smish my gathers down here, because if you don't, they tend to walk in front of that presser foot. The pressure of the presser foot will kind of push your gathers, and before you know it, they're all kind of bunched up here at the bottom of this pin. But you want them to stay evenly spread out where you put them so that they're nice and pretty. So I kind of squish them and kind of let them glide up under the presser foot. And I just go till I get to my next spot. It's the center mark in this case, to my next pin, and then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to kind of distribute these gathers evenly, make them pretty, smish, and sew. Take my pin out, and my shish kebab stick will help me hold that last little bit in place and not walk off the edge. You, of course, if you were doing this, you would back stitch or do whatever stitch your machine has, or stay stitch at the end. Okay, so now this is what I was talking about. Here I've got my seam going down the middle, and I have gathering threads on each side. And that's what I meant by going about 1/8 of an inch on either side of your seam lines. This way, when you go to pull the gathering threads out, you're not popping that seam, because if you've sewn over the gathering thread, sometimes when you pull that out, you'll hear your seam kind of pop, like those threads kind of intertwined. So I'm going to pull my same bobbin thread to pull these out. I'm just going to pull it out. Here we go. Okay, and now we have nice, pretty little gathers. See? And they're nice and even. You can tell the centers match, and looks really nice on this side. So I hope you enjoyed my little tutorial.